Hi, I'm Richard Chamberlain, and welcome to Make the Call. Today's episode is a very, very in-depth investigation into the Navajo County Superior Court? Superior Court system. What they've got going in Navajo County in Holbrook, Arizona, they've got a private prison system. And this private prison system goes out and it greases up everybody. It pays off the judges, it pays off the public defenders, it pays off the district attorney, the police, everybody that has anything to do with law enforcement and government is paid off by the private prison system. And today I'm here with Ken Wilson. Thanks for joining me, Ken.
You're welcome.
And Ken has a very unique circumstance. But even though it's unique, it's something that's happened over and over and over in Navajo County. It's even happened to me. These people are the scum of the earth. And what they do is they commit a crime, they commit constitutional and civil rights violations, and they compound their criminal actions by committing another crime and committing another crime and committing another crime. They falsify documents. They don't let people stand and give testimony. Whatever doesn't work, whatever doesn't allow them to collect money from our tax system, that's what they do. They're criminals. They're the Navajo Mafia. So here we are today with Ken, and we're going to talk to Ken about what's happened to him and his interaction with the Navajo Mafia. All right, Ken, if you could just tell us what happened. How did,
Back in 2008, I purchased equipment from Hendrix Salvage in Phoenix.
Hendrix Salvage and Recycling has been operating in Arizona for decades, but for the last couple years, authorities say the business served as a front for the illegal sale of metal scrapped from stolen cars.
And as I bought a little bit from them, a piece here and there, I would take them the money, pay for the equipment, or one of my drivers would take money down and pay them. And they gave us invoices because we kept complaining we needed the titles and invoices for the purchases we did.
On vehicles, right?
On vehicles, semi-trucks. And a few pieces of equipment, a front-end loader, a 920 cat loader, which we could verify through the satellite image. It was in their yard, and we got pictures of it. So it identifies a few pieces of equipment, but the image, the satellite doesn't always catch everything, and it only does it in stages, and you have to pull it up on the computer. Mm-hmm. I wasn't even aware of that. The investigator found it. And then as we purchased this equipment, I was smart enough to get receipts and titles and bills of sales at the time because we kept complaining. Well, I put those in my briefcase at the house, and anyway, there was solid proof there, and when the police hit the search warrant on my home, they took all my business records, tore them apart. Then took those to, of course the police did, got with the prosecutor, pulled out the receipts they wanted to show, because we had a trucking business and we traveled coast to coast, anywhere. Potatoes, watermelon, whatever. We hauled produce, meat, into Colorado, Utah, Oklahoma, New Mexico, New York. We went everywhere. And we did a lot of work for Frito-Lay down in Casa Grande. And those invoices, they stripped my records, tore them all apart. And I had driver packets that showed which truck was where, the fuel receipts, and who in what town, and who made that trip. Well, they never turned those back over to me. Any of those records. Still to this day, I've never gotten any copies of anything that was taken out of my house. The only thing that the prosecutor produced was receipts that showed my trucks were somewhere in that town at the time. And my drivers, what cards were used, credit cards. So, and I didn't have enough credit cards, so sometimes I give them my personal cards to use to run on because you didn't have enough cards for everybody. Anyway, that's what they would produce. Is we kept requesting discovery, turnover discovery, and it would never get turned over numerous times. So they, meaning the prosecutor in Navajo County, Blaine Roden at the time, would say, yeah, you know, we'd get the request, and he said we only filed 3 out of all these years. Well, I've got 12 copies of what was filed in my own possession. So it proves he's a total liar right there. That's fraud. What he's doing is hiding discovery. That's fraud. That's against the law. And because he works for the court system, he thinks he's against the law, and he's not. I just get really what they've put me through. And you know, let's go back a little bit. I know we got to have prisons and jails. I understand that. But we don't have to have abundance. And we don't have to lock people up that hasn't done anything wrong, and they make a crime out of it just so you can go to prison and they fill a bed.
Why do they want to do that?
They make money on it. Think about the capital that's generated off of that. People say, no, it costs us money. Yes, it does cost the taxpayers money, but it doesn't cost them a dime because they're getting money through the back door, so to speak. So let's lay it out. A public defender is working for Navajo County. So he bills for investigative fees, or he bills for paperwork, or he bills for whatever. So he turns that in, and all along they've already got the deck stacked. They know what they're going to do with you, and they get that money after you turn it in. They split it with the judge. Whoever knows? Who's going to know? How are you going to show it or prove it? Well, we done a little bit of research and we found it out. So, yeah, they are paying the judges. No doubt. They are paying the judges, and they're splitting the money.
How did you find that out?
Well, a friend of mine that lives up there started doing a little bit of research and talking to people, and one of the clerks of the court came forward and gave information to him and said, this is what's going on, and I don't want to go to jail. And I'm not talking or telling anybody until I'm guaranteed I'm not going to jail. Because I never took initial part of it, but I knew about it, and I didn't stop it. So she said, and I also took an oath, and when you take this oath, that's why she's so worried about her end of it. And then we had another lady that came from the sheriff's department that spoke up, works for Casey Clark. Navajo County Sheriff's Department and MCAT, and said there was money missing out of RICO. They deliberately hide paperwork if it's a family member that's been charged with something. Case in point, there's a sexual conduct case, sexual assault on minors that's been buried for 8 years, and they just pulled it out because they know all this is starting to hit the fan with the government stepping in, the feds and Department of Justice. We've made lots of calls and filed complaints. But these judges are violating people's constitutional rights just left and right. And you got, you know, yes, if you broke the law, yes, you got to go to jail. Or whatever they determine. That's understandable. Nobody can't say that. But there's so many cases and points that, and I feel so bad for all the families that they've taken down and destroyed. And I mean destroyed. Not just me, but thousands. They've torn them apart, literally. But I'll give you a good example. So, during the plea hearing negotiation, in my case particularly, the judge referred, talking to the prosecutor, Blaine Roden, my attorney, once those words came out of the prosecutor's mouth, the judge referred to the prosecutor and said, yeah, when I called you back the other day to talk about Wilson's case, this case number, and then the prosecutor looked at him and shook his head, meaning don't say that because that's disbarment, automatic, because you can't fraternize with the judge about somebody else's case. And we've got solid proof that he did talk about my case with the prosecutor without my attorney present. You can't do that. That means they were behind closed doors going, yeah, let's send him to prison. Let's hurry up and get this over with. Let's close this case. So that did take place for sure. And they also lied because my attorney at the time, Charity Clark, which might add, was talking to the prosecutor behind my back as well. We dug up some private emails. We got a hold of those, which I can read them. Anyway, she had been communicating with the prosecutor. Now, to go back from when I went in her office to talk to her, discuss my trial, this was the weekend before. It was on a Friday, and my trial was supposed to start on a Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday. And I went into her office, and she said, oh, by the way, the prosecutor called me, and he said he spoke to the judge about your 404 motion, which is to hold out any past criminal history that I've had. And it looks like we're going to get favored on our 404 motion. I said, oh. I said, okay. That was on a Thursday. And then I came back on Friday to prep for my trial. And then while I was sitting there, she got the phone call from the prosecutor, and I heard the conversation. He said, I spoke to the judge. I spoke, which meaning the prosecutor, about the 404 motion.
What's the prosecutor's name again?
Blaine Roden.
Blaine Roden.
And he said, and he denied your 404 motion. Well, right there is automatic disbarment, because he can't speak to the judge about my motion. The judge has to send him notice through the clerk of what the motion is and denied or whatever. Mm-hmm. That wasn't the case. She said, well, that's a big blow to us. We need that out. Well, including my business record. So anyway, that Monday she came up with a scheme to get another delay because he wasn't going to postpone for us. Anyway, at that point in time, when she spoke to me, she said, we've got to get your educational background, and we got to know what we're doing here. So I said, that's fine. And going through this whole hearing, or this whole process, I started to see and uncover, at that hearing particularly, she got up and said, Mr. Wilson's not admitting guilt to participating. The only thing that he's admitting to is he knew about it after the fact. That was never in on anything. No minute entries on the audio. So I said, okay, I know that's a lie. I was in that hearing. I know what was said because it's not on the minute entries. So I sent that audio to Florida Forensics. And they broke it down and said that audio was stopped for 3 minutes, but Judge Higgins never went off the record or never entered back in, which means it did happen because they cut it out, period. They stopped the audio. Once you do that, that's a crime. That's a fraudulent scheme because you're scheming. It doesn't matter he's a Superior Court judge. To me, he's not honorable. He's nothing but a crook. Blaine Roden. And it's not because they're prosecuting me. Let's go to a fair court. Let's go to trial in a fair court. That's all I want. A fair trial. Give it to me. You're not doing it up here. You violated my constitutional rights. You violate everybody's constitutional rights. You stack the deck with the grand jurors when you bring them in. I know this for a fact. They're selecting certain people. There's a big Indian guy. He's about 6'2", 6'3", long hair, in a ponytail. And he just so happens to be one of their main foremans they bring in on grand juries all the time to hear the cases, which they know personally, and he's off the reservation. And I think there again, the council members need to be called out as well on Navajo Reservation. Rosie Sosi is one of the very political people up there around the reservation who said that she was willing to come forward as well on a lot of stuff. She's fed up with it. She's done with it. Because they're using all the Navajos as well as us to send to prison to fill beds and collect that cash. And yes, it's costing taxpayers a lot of money. Totally agree. But it's not costing them a lot of money because they're making money. Then you go back to destroying evidence. There was a meeting held down in Phoenix, which we can prove 100%, with Dan Healy, which was a prosecutor at the time, the detective, McNulty, and Daryl Shareeves, my co-defendant, who said in that meeting I had absolutely nothing to do with it, wasn't even aware of what they were doing. He testified to that in what they call a free talk. And his attorney was there, which was Alan LeBeau. So I told the federal agent, you need to corner him up and jack his ass up because we can prove it without a doubt. He was in that meeting and they had it and they threw it away. They trashed it so that we wouldn't have a copy of it. But we can prove that meeting took place and they said it didn't. There you go. We can prove it did. Without a doubt. So, and that makes me feel good to know it shows they're all lying just to get a conviction. Now you go back. That meeting took place, so Blaine Roden, when we requested a copy of that, oh, I don't know what meeting you're talking about. Yeah, he does. He knows good and well. And then they moved Dan Healy off my case. Ready for this? Moved him off my case and sent him to sent him over to another court in the juvenile system to get him out of the prosecutor's office. Carolyn Holliday, that started my case, booked and left the country when she found out I was going to go to trial. I wouldn't take their plea. She boogied and quit her job, Superior Court judge, left the country to Belize, which they don't extradite. I overheard a conversation in the courtroom between her, Ron Wood, Leonard Brown was there, and Dan Healy, the prosecutor. So they know I heard that conversation and they got worried because they kept begging me to take a plea, which, mind you, I can't even get an audio on that hearing. We've requested from the Judge Higgins, there again, we've requested every hearing I've had, all the minute entries, paperwork, all the audios, we've requested all that from him and he guaranteed it. Now, you ready for this? Yeah, I'll make sure you get all that. Never got it. So went to the clerk of the court, and the clerk of the court said, oh, we can't give you that stuff. You have to go through Judge Higgins. That's against the law. They just denied me of my Constitution again because they can't stop me from getting stuff to defend myself, which is one of their very good tactics. So what they do is they delay turning over discovery, and anything that can help you in your case to prove you're innocent, they delay it intentionally. Because if they delay it long enough, then, you know, they continue that process. They know they have to move forward and get you through trial or force you to take a plea bargain. One of their pleas. Oh, we're going to force you. You know, we'll give you 50 years if you go to trial. You know, well, how do they know they're going to give me 50 years unless they've already stacked the deck? Because it's up to the jury to find me guilty, not to them. So how can they say they're going to give me 50 years? And that's what they tell you. Oh, you'll get 50 years. How do they know that? Unless they're part of the scheme. You can't possibly know that because it's up to the jury to find you guilty.
And then they suppress evidence.
And
doctor.
Absolutely. They doctor documents. They backdate them and put them in your file when you request things. They change the date, take it out, change the date, make up what they want and put it back in your file. No, it happened on this date. And you have a copy that doesn't match their date. Oh, your copy's no good because ours is in a court file. That's one of the games they play. So you watch case numbers, dates very carefully in Navajo County because that's one of the scams they pull. But it's even bigger than that. They're committing fraudulent schemes. Navajo County is committing fraudulent schemes against humanity, people. Those are crimes that are punishable, especially when a judge and prosecutor, police officers, public defenders, when they involve, because they work for the court system, when they do this, those are crimes that are punishable at 20 years minimum in federal prison. And my goal is here, and I'll say it again, if I lose in a trial somewhere else, I'm good, okay? I'm good. Whatever happens, happens. But they're going to go to prison, and they're going to go for what they've done to other people and me. I don't care. That's bottom line. I will fight until they go to prison, because I know what they're doing, and I can prove it. There's too many people that know about it now. It's gotten exposed everywhere. And for them to walk away and think they're going to line their pockets and continue it is totally absurd. It's not going to happen, man. Not going to happen. I'll fight them and fight them and fight them. And as I said, if I lose in trial on my own, that's fine. Okay? Then that's what the jury must have thought. But let me have my paperwork and present my case fairly, like it should be, according to the Constitution, which you're not getting up there. You're not getting any justice. Explain him, and that's why they got rid of Dan Healy, the prosecutor, because he was the one that went to the hearing with my co-defendant. And he knew what was said, so they needed that statement gone, irregardless. So at the evidentiary hearing, to present the argument about the plea, the detective gets on the stand. And he says, when he's asked by my attorney, Bernie Porter, did you deliver the search warrant on Mr. Wilson's home? Yes, we did. Do you ever recall seeing any titles or documents, legal documents, in Mr. Wilson's home? No, I don't. We never took, exact words out of the cop's mouth now, McNulty, whatever you want to call him, exact words. We never took no such thing out of his home. It says right on the search warrant, briefcase full of titles and legal documents. They never turned them over to me. And he under oath, he lied. And Judge Higgins let his interview stand. When my witnesses were trying to testify, which, mind you, Brad Farber was a very good witness for me, because he knew about everything and how we purchased this stuff, because he paid for a lot of this stuff. And so, mind you now, he was scared to testify because they threatened to put him in prison if he came up there and opened his mouth and testified on my behalf. They threatened him. My attorney at the time, which was Leonard Brown, when I was in jail up there for the 18 months, my own attorney, Leonard Brown, threatened my witness not to come back, which I wasn't aware of until later on, when he told me that he was threatened by Leonard Brown not to testify for me. And then I had him for a couple of months. Then I found out in the course of all this, at the beginning of my the whole ordeal with me, the indictment, at the beginning when I had Leonard Brown, I found out Leonard Brown was a family friend of Hendricks Salvage, who I purchased the equipment from, and had been a longtime friend of Hendricks. So I fired him right away. But all the information I had given him over that few months, he was able to give to the prosecutor and to Hendricks, of course, because they were friends. Come on.
So Brown is a public defender or a lawyer?
No, he's a public defender. And I fired him because at the time I wasn't out and able to get my own attorneys. So that's when Brad decided he was going to step in and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go hire a lawyer. We can't have this. They're violating your constitutional rights and the whole works. He said, it's not right. This whole thing's wrong. Anyway, I fired Leonard Brown, and then I got Benjamin Burr. Okay? So Benjamin Burr came on board, and he started fighting for my rights. And at that point in time, Benjamin Burr, and to this day, he never laid down for him, and he won't. He's very straight up. He got, he's not a liar. He's one that will fight for you no matter what. And you may not like it the way he does it or how he approaches his case, or you may not like him as a person, and that's fine. He's there to defend you, and that's what he does. He's not afraid of those people. And I kind of joking with him at one point and asked him if he had run for county attorney. because I think he needs to be county attorney. At least he could clean up the mess. And why the rest of them go to jail, start weeding out the people that don't need to be there.
So has Benjamin Brewer ever said to you, because he said it to me for my case, he said, you don't want to go to court in this county because everybody's bought off, everybody's corrupt.
Yes.
And that's why I had to take probation.
Yeah. He said it to me on several occasions. But he's not the only one. A few others said you just don't want to be in this county and fight in this county. You need to change of venue and get out of this county. You're not going to get a fair trial at all. So
is this a good old boy situation where everybody knows everybody and they're all in on, everybody's getting greased up?
Yes.
Could you say that for me?
Yes, I can. Absolutely. What it is some very good people that live in that community, which is a majority of them, that are just being railroaded. Gary Solomon's been up there for years, his whole family. You've got the Shamways that have been up in that area. There's big family names up there that have been around a long time. The Hatches, which is Judge Hatch. Most of his family members put a little dime in the air to change this. So it's a good old boy network. And the same with Higgins. They're friends, so they communicate with prosecutors. They lied. Sylvia Allen's son, which is a senator, her son-in-law, I believe it's her son-in-law, got jacked up and fired, and they tried to prosecute him, and I don't know where that case is at right now, but he'll be able to tell you about his part of it and how they fabricated evidence. But going back to what the questions you're asking, the evidence part of it. So they knew back in 2014, June of 2014, that I am going to trial. Okay? They were given that notice. They never turned over discovery. To this day, they still haven't turned it over from my home. And it's business records. They tore them apart, which is against the law. They have to keep them in their entirety and only take out stuff they need and give me copies of everything so I can show them, defend myself. But they've never done that. They only turned over receipts they wanted to present with the dates they wanted. And those dates didn't even match because on the police reports, the original police report, which we have, which we're getting ready to present as well, the original one that was written in 2009 has the dates of when these thefts occurred of these vehicles in these different multi-states. We have those dates. And they don't match the dates of the receipts. They're after or before. So what they did is rewrote the police reports and changed the dates. I can even show they changed the dates on the police reports intentionally to get the indictment. Now let's go to the indictment. They went in to do their talk with the grand jury. They lied to the grand jury. I can also prove that. About our whole case, they lied to the grand jury. So the grand jury, of course that deck was stacked anyway, but they were able to go in there, fabricate stuff, because I can show it on the minute entries where they lied to the grand jury. It was Dan Healy. And that's another reason they got rid of him and moved him so we couldn't, question him.
So he's part of the corruption too, then,
absolutely. Right? Dan Healy, absolutely. Big time.
Can you name off everybody that you know there, specifically, that you know their name, their position, and
absolutely.
Their crime? Can you give me that real quick?
Yeah. Judge Robert J. Higgins, Superior Court. Judge Hatch, Ralph Hatch. Judge Nelson. Blaine Roden. Brad Carlin, or however you pronounce his last name, which is the head county attorney. And Blaine Roden is deputy county attorney. Edwards, deputy county attorney. Dan Healy, deputy county attorney. Emily LaBarge, public defender's office. Definitely involved. You just can't imagine what we found. But yes, she's definitely involved. And 3 other people I'm not
Brown?
Well, Leonard Brown for sure. Yeah, he left. By the way, he was forced to leave his job and he left to New York, so we couldn't serve him subpoena to come to federal court under another case. It really convenient. You're out of state. The state can't subpoena him and make him come back. Follow what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it's part of a big network. They just move people around until they get things all cleared up, and then they bring them back in, and it starts all over again. But there's so many more. Casey Clark, who's been taking RICO money and weapons from people. The one young lady, her father's, all his Class 1 weapons were sold, and their money was never accounted for. She never got a dime. And, oh yeah, there's so many people up there involved in it.
Is their main focus asset seizure?
Asset seizure, absolutely. Cars, money. Nancy Carr is one of the women that want to talk to you and tell you about her case. The county attorney offered her $15,000 out of, they confiscated $50,000 out of her house, which she accounted for through her own money. Had nothing to do with her boyfriend's business. They took a truck from her. They took a house. They put liens on everything, kept the money, and then called her up because they can't charge her with nothing. She's done nothing wrong. And they made a deal with her. Hey, we'll give you $15,000 back and make this all go away in your house, and we're done with it. And you're not going to be charged. And she said, no, absolutely not. I want my money back. That's my money. And I can prove where it came from. And you're going to give me my house back. So they were begging her to take a deal, and she said no. And then, of course, it was turned over to the federal agents that are investigating now. Copies of documents from the attorneys and prosecutor and stuff we found on our own since working this. Then we got 2 outside lawyers, I'm not going to mention names, that have brought us a bunch of stuff to help us out. And they will testify against them in Navajo County, judges and prosecutor's office, about their conduct. And then you had some good prosecutors that bailed from there because they didn't want to get involved in the corruption.